And like I said before, that's how women get screwed over twice. Once with the actual act, and then second with the flood of hormones, which can make them bond without choosing to. Hi everyone, welcome to the Lead From Love podcast. I am Yalini, I am your host and love coach. Now, today's hot topic is all about sex, but not in the way that you know it. I'm going to be talking about what it does to your brain and how it can screw a woman over twice, but leave men immune. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad. It could be lots of fun. I'd actually go as far as saying that it's good for you. A regular sex life can regulate your hormones. It can keep you feeling good and calm and stable. But if you're a woman and you're dating and that level of intimacy comes into the picture, it can hijack your brain and your body, which can make it hard to know if it's him that you really want or if you're just chasing a physical addiction. So I'm going to step out what happens in your brain when you have sex. I'm going to clarify how it affects men and women differently. You're going to want to stick around for this one because it is not the same. And then I'm going to give you 4 options to help you reduce the risk of getting screwed over by the wrong man so you can know if it's him that you really want. Now, to set the scene, I'm going to start off with a story. I wonder if you can relate. Have you ever slept with a guy and it wasn't for anything more than just being in the moment? The connection's great, everything is flowing, you're having fun. You just want to enjoy it for all that raw, hot and heavy passion that it has to offer. You're cool, you're chill. You're not looking for a relationship or commitment. In fact, you're not even sure if he meets your requirements to be anything more than just a fling. If that's even something that you want. You're just there to have fun. It's the 21st century. Men aren't the only ones with needs. So you are in the moment. You're enjoying it for all it's worth. And maybe it's amazing. Or maybe it lacks a little bit of that luster. It's not quite that toe-curling, orgasmic moment of pleasure. But it's okay. It's not like it's going anywhere anyway. You're not even looking. But here's where something interesting starts to happen. Afterwards, have you caught yourself looking at your phone? Or feel your heart race with excitement, anticipation every time it rings or buzzes, hoping that it's him? And then do you get that sinking feeling when it's not? Maybe feeling just a little bit frustrated or confused, wondering, why hasn't he called? Why hasn't he messaged? Is he thinking of you? Does he want to see you? What's going on? And it's weird, right? Because you didn't want anything anyway. In fact, the sex mightn't have even been that good in the first place. So why is this even affecting you? You're smart, you're independent, there were plenty of other fish in the sea and you know better. Sound familiar? Now, if you've been there, how would it feel to know that you're not alone, you're not crazy, there's nothing wrong with you? It actually makes perfect sense. There is a really simple explanation. Would that help you? Here it is. You ready for it? It's not you. It's your hormones. Let me explain. Sex isn't just about physical pleasure. It feels good in part because it creates connection. It creates a form of intimacy and bonding, even if you don't want it to. Even if for you the connection is completely superficial, there were no emotions. You're just there to have some fun, just for a good time. But biologically, it bonds you. Because during sex, your brain produces a hormone called oxytocin, which starts to build inside of you. And then it releases, flooding the brain, which can feel intoxicating. And it's important to know this because this is also known as the love hormone. It's what helps you connect with someone and it gives you that euphoric feeling like you're in love. And of course, your brain doesn't just produce oxytocin through sex. It also produces it through intimacy and touch and hugging. But there's just a lot more of it when you have sex, especially if you orgasm. So to give you an idea of how powerful this hormone can be when it comes to bonding with someone, this is the same hormone that women release when they've had a baby so they can bond with their child. So it's so big in getting you loved up and hooked and attached. And then on top of this, during sex, oxytocin is what contributes to the release of dopamine, which is the part of the brain's reward system. So on top of getting loved up and attached to him, now your brain is associating him with getting a reward, with getting pleasure. And because we always want to go back to what feels good, despite whatever you told yourself before, how you're not interested, you don't want more, now your rational mind is competing with your hormonal brain that has you pining after him because it sees him as the answer. He is your connection point to the reward. Here is a connection to pleasure. So you got to go back. And this is where that physical addiction can come into play, because it's like your brain has you looking for that next hit. That's why I say women get screwed over twice, because you get it once in bed, and then the second time with all of the hormonal downpour going on inside of you. And it's not in a fun way this time, because it can make it hard to discern if it's really him that you want, or if you've just been hijacked by hormones. And it's all because you've been wired to create an attachment that didn't exist before. And it can happen with anyone that you go to bed with. So let me give you an example of how your brain even creates this link. Maybe you've heard of Pavlov's dog. It's the experiment where Pavlov tricks a dog's brain to get excited over something really mundane. It's just a bell. And ringing a bell on its own, that doesn't do much for a dog. Probably wouldn't do much for you either, right? Your rational mind already knows better. So to get excited, what he does is he brings food out every time he rings the bell. Now, most dogs are going to get excited when they see food, right? They'll start to salivate, they start to drool. And you do this enough times. You ring the bell, you bring food out, you ring the bell, food. Pretty soon, that brain is trained to associate the bell with food, to the point that you don't even have to bring food out. As soon as the bell rings, that dog knows what's coming. It starts to drool. So the bell ends up stimulating the pleasure and reward part of the brain, not the food. So what does that mean for you when it comes to sex? You might not think much of a guy on his own. He could be like that mundane bell at the start of Pavlov's experiment. But sleep with him and the reward center of your brain is stimulated. So now the guy that you're sleeping with, like the bell, is what your brain is now drooling over. Not the sex, just like it's not the food the dog's drooling for. It's the bell, it's the guy. Because that is where the pleasure center has created the link. Now you combine this with your loved up bonding hormone and you can see how you can really start to get worked up, because on top of wanting your next hit, you've bonded to him. You are emotionally hooked, and that can throw you for a loop, leaving you wondering why he hasn't called after you slept together, when before you probably didn't even care. He didn't have that hold over you. So why am I focusing on women? If this is basic human biology, then we're all bonding through sex, right? Here's the kicker. It plays out differently for men and women. Biologically, men produce more testosterone than women, especially when they're young and virile. So when they have sex, testosterone cancels out the effects of oxytocin. It basically neutralizes it. So they are not at the mercy of bonding like women are. And then to make matters worse, women produce more oxytocin than men anyway, which means we get the full brunt of the bonding love hormone. This is why men can have casual sex and not get emotionally attached. But women having sex once, That's enough to bond. And that's the difference. Unlike Pavlov's dog, it doesn't require multiple events to create the association. Just once is enough to get you hooked. Now, that doesn't mean men can't bond through sex. They just need to be emotionally connected or committed to you first. Because when their hearts are in it, especially when they're in a relationship, that is when men produce lower levels of testosterone, giving oxytocin the space to do its thing so they can bond with you. They can be emotionally connected and loved up. And I know it might seem unfair. Why can't women have sex like men? We have needs too, especially if you're single. But from an evolutionary perspective, you know what? It has a purpose. In terms of human survival, men are designed to sow their seeds. It's why they're not the ones that get pregnant. It's why they can't get emotionally invested through sex alone, because it would block their ability to go off far and wide and procreate. But for women, sex runs the risk of pregnancy, which can make her really vulnerable. So she bonds to him because she might need him to stick around and provide and protect for a while. And if you think about it, it's kind of a good thing, because at least it's easier when her brain tricks her into thinking she likes him. Now, of course, this makes sense when you have your child rearing years ahead of you. So what about after the risk of pregnancy is gone? Does it hold past a certain age? Ladies, you'll be happy to know it actually flips. So past menopause, women are more able to have sex like men. And because men's testosterone drops, they're the ones that become more emotionally attached. So you know what? If you want to have the last hurrah, if you're able to have sex like men, you can get it. You just might have to wait a while first. But either way, it goes to show that men and women, we are built differently when it comes to how we experience and respond to sex. Now, of course, there'll be some exceptions, but on the whole, this is basically how it plays out. And despite this, I'm going to go ahead and guess that some of you ladies might still be thinking, it doesn't apply to you, even if you're still in your child rearing years, that, somehow you can have sex and not get emotionally involved, or that, now that you know this, maybe you can override it. And the reason I say that is because that was me. When I learned this, honestly, it blew my mind, and I reflected my own experiences, and it's just like the light bulb finally switched on. Suddenly everything made sense. I could see how it played out in my own life. But it's still annoying that, there was that part of me that thought, yeah, but, because otherwise, what does that mean? No sex till marriage, or no sex until you're in a relationship? What's the safe way to enjoy intimacy as a woman without getting screwed over? How do you do it in a way where you can trust yourself, you can trust your emotions, and not be at the mercy of your attaching and addictive hormones? Because otherwise it feels like being baited through sex. It can make it difficult to distinguish between your head and your heart. Are you pining after him because of genuine feelings, or just because you've become emotionally and physically hooked? And like I said before, that's how women get screwed over twice. Once with the actual act, and then second with the flood of hormones, which can make them bond without choosing to. So there's a lot at stake. Because if you have sex, it can leave you pining after a man that's not even right for you, and that you may otherwise have not even wanted. And on top of that, here's the thing to be conscious of. Because the better the sex, the deeper the bond, which means the greater the pain of withdrawal if you don't hear from him. So you have that going on one hand, but then at the same time, you want to try before you buy. You want to make sure you're compatible in this department, because of course, the last thing that you want is to invest your time and your energy and your emotions with a person and get to a point where you really like them, where you commit, and then it just fizzles in the bedroom. Because then what do you do? And it's not superficial. Intimacy is important in relationships. It's what separates a romantic connection from a friendship. And when you're with someone in that scenario, that bonding process is important. It helps keep that connection strong. So then, what's the balance? How do you navigate this space and still come out strong? Because the best case scenario outside of a relationship is that you sleep together once and then you never see him again. And I say best case because even though that can still be painful, at least it's over and done with and you're forced to move on. Because the worst case is that he keeps coming back. Not for a commitment, but to keep playing with you for years and years. And you let him because you're hooked. Because every cell in your body wants more and it's hard to resist. And that is where the real pain lives. And it can feel hard to remove yourself from that situation because your hormones have a way of just knocking the sense right out of you. So to protect yourself from getting caught in this painful bonding and addiction cycle, it's important to have a plan in place. It's important to know what your boundaries are. So here are 4 steps that can support you. Now, they're just suggestions. I'm not telling you what to do. Ultimately, that's your choice. Only you can know what's right for you. But I'm here to offer you some options. 1, have a talk first. Be clear about what you both want. If he's not looking for anything serious and you are, you might want to think twice about whether you want to give him rights to your body and your emotionally addictive hormones. Because sometimes it can just come down to this one simple question. Are the withdrawals worth it for him? 2, if you're both looking for a relationship, wait until you're both emotionally invested, because at least then you'll know your emotions are grounded in something real. It's not just your hormones playing tricks on you. And the best part about this is that at least when you're intimate, it only brings you closer together. You're not just being used and discarded for a good time. 3, avoid sex on a first date if you want more. Here's the thing. A lot of guys, well-meaning as they may be, even if they're looking for a relationship, they'll want to be in the moment with you. They'll say things like, it won't change their opinion of them if you have sex straight away. And even if they genuinely think this, I'm going to tell you what really happens. In the back of their minds, they'll think, well, if she did it with me, then who else is she doing it with? And you know what? It's completely normal because we think it too. I would too. If he said, I don't normally do this, I'm making an exception for you, I'm going to wonder who else he said that to. And that can change something inside. So if you want hope of something more meaningful, just wait that little bit longer, because at least then he'll be required to show up in a more meaningful way for you. And what I'm going to add on top of this is that guys value what they have to work for. We all do. When we kick a goal, it doesn't mean that much if it was easy and it took, all of 5 minutes to complete. But when it's challenging, when we put in days and weeks and months of blood and sweat and tears, when we have to keep showing up and pushing through and finding a way, and then we make it, then we finally kick that goal, that's when it really means something. And you know what? Sex and dating, they're no different. Now, I'm not saying make it hard on purpose. I'm just saying give it a little time, at least until it's right for you emotionally, not just physically. And I get it. When you have a high libido, it can feel painful having to wait. Why can't we have our cake and eat it too? Men do it all the time. But we're not men. And our hormones affect us differently. It's not their responsibility to look after us. It's ours. And 4, understand what you really want from intimacy. What does it mean to you? What do you really want from it? For me personally, I've had to change my approach to sex over the years and have a deeper understanding of what I'm really craving. Because, initially I thought I could find a loophole to get around the risk of bonding. Like, surely there's got to be a way. And you know what I found? There isn't one. I can try to pretend I'm like a man, pretend I'm fine, I don't care, I'm unattached. But the truth is, I'm not. And I had to learn the hard way that it wasn't worth it for me. I'm not interested in giving away free sex because for me, that's essentially what it is outside of a relationship. If he hasn't earned the rights to my body, he's not going to show up for me or commit to me. So why would I give it all away just to get screwed over first by my hormones and then second by him? And what I realized when I took a step back, it was that I was selling myself a lie. I thought I could enjoy sex just for what it was, because sometimes you just want that physical connection. But when I was honest with myself, that's not really what I wanted, at least not all that I wanted. Because although physical intimacy feels nice, what feels nicer is being with someone who cares for you, where you feel safe wrapped up in his arms, where you don't worry if he's going to leave straight after or if he'll reject you when you want to cuddle, where you feel emotionally connected and taken care of and you can be completely in your body, able to just be free to enjoy the moment without having to worry about anything else. And I realized that sex, just for the sake of it, even if it's great, it feels a little empty inside. Just left me feeling sad. So now, even if I'm physically craving it, I have to force myself to play the scene out. If there isn't a deeper connection with a man that's committed to me, committed to us, it's just going to leave me with a body hijacked by imposter emotions and feeling sad and feeling used. Because short-term gratification for long-term pain, that's not worth it for me. So for me, I had to get to a point where I had to make a decision that I wouldn't accept anything less. Because you know what? I'd like to think I'm worth more than that. My body is the prize. It's not something they get just because they want it or because they took me out for dinner. We're not bartering here. Since when was one dinner equivalent to one night in bed? No, that's not how it works. Now, I will just add that when you don't give away free sex, someone will kick and scream and they'll say all sorts of things to get you to make an exception for them. They'll tell you how unreasonable it is or how with you it's different. You can trust them. You can make the exception. They won't run away. But you know what? Someone who really cares won't ask you to compromise your standards or your boundaries. And for me, it's helped me create a new relationship with intimacy. Because it's something I only want to share with a man whose heart is open to me, that will stay the night and be there in the morning, who I feel safe with and taken care of. And that's a huge game changer. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's hard sometimes and it requires a lot of self-restraint. But ultimately, now I'm taking care of me. And I get to be taken care of by the right man in the process. And sure, it might feel like a risk because you don't try before you buy. But I'm not saying wait until marriage. Just wait until there's a commitment. And hey, things might change down the road, but at least you were held in love in the meantime. Not just held for a second and discarded. Because here's the thing. It's hard to lead from love if you don't know if it's even your heart that you're leading from. Because we're not objects. As women, we are deeply feeling beings and we're allowed to be respected as such. So these are just some options that are available to you. You can have a play with them and see what works for you. You'll know best through trial and error. Your own experience is going to be the best teacher here. Because sex isn't just about what feels good in the moment. It has a ripple effect. The moment you sleep with someone, your brain releases oxytocin to make you bond. It's what helps mothers bond with their newborn babies. That is how powerful it is. And when you are on the receiving end of that with sex, you get emotionally attached. It's what makes you constantly check your phone wondering if he's messaged, when before you didn't care so much. But now it hurts. It hurts when you haven't heard from him. Not just because you've bonded, but because the reward center of your brain has been stimulated and you have got dopamine flowing that wants you to go back for another hit. So it can feel like withdrawals because your body wants his body, at least hormonally speaking, which can make it hard to know if it's really you or your hijacked body that's talking. And I know it can feel frustrating because why can't we have sex like men? But the bottom line is, because we're not men. We don't have the testosterone they have to override the effects of oxytocin. For them, sex can just be sex, at least when they're not emotionally involved or committed. And I know it mightn't feel fair, but it's just the straw we drew in the evolutionary pot. Men get to go out and procreate, and we need to bond to have babies, at least until the roles are reversed later in life. So to help you take care of yourself in this moment so that you're not the victim to your hormones and you can actually make decisions that are best for you, here are the 4 options I went through that can help you. And again, they're just suggestions. It's up to you to do what's best for you. 1, get clear on where you both stand before sleeping together. Are you both looking for commitment? Because if you are and he's not, he might not be worth the emotional and physical withdrawal symptoms that you'll be left to deal with. 2, if you're on the same page, wait until there's a strong emotional connection, because at least then you won't question if your emotions are real or not. And then the intimacy will just add to the emotional connection. 3, avoid sex on the first date if you're looking for more or if you want to avoid the emotional roller coaster of bonding, because you might be giving it all away to a man who's not worth it or who won't stick around even if he says he will. Remember, men value what they work for, and if he gets it on date 1, he might wonder who else is getting it too. And 4, get clear on what intimacy means to you so that you can set the right standards and boundaries around it. Now, this one might take a little bit of time and trial and error to figure it out. But once you understand what you're really looking for when you share your body with someone, it'll help you uphold the standards and cost of entry, because sex isn't just about instant gratification. It can be a way to connect deeply, to feel seen, to feel safe, and to feel loved. And when you know what it's worth to you, anything less just isn't worth it. And it doesn't mean it's always easy to uphold your standards, especially when you're physically craving something. But if you can't uphold the requirements for yourself, then you can't require someone else to. This isn't about self-denial. It's about freeing you from the confusing effects of your hormones so you can finally get clear on who you are, on what you want and what you deserve. So you don't give yourself away to a man who doesn't deserve you, because it'll only mess with you, not him. So at least now you know what's really going on when you get it on. And with this insight and these options, you now have the freedom to choose how you can minimize the risk of getting physically hooked, so you can be sure that it's him that you really want. You get to take your power back, because you deserve to be held. You deserve to be seen in a deep and meaningful way, not just for a moment. And when you're connected with yourself, that is when you can lead with love. And that is when you can receive more of it in the process. So take care of yourself, explore and have fun with this. You'll learn by doing. But now it gets to be your choice.